Welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and nostalgic 90s nerds to my channel, Slime and Slashers, where, we talk about everything from Nickelodeon slime to horror movie slashers, but plenty of stuff in between. Today's video, however, is a first-time video because I'm doing my very first collab on my very own channel. I'm so pumped, guys. There are so many wonderful people involved. Specifically, I have multiple YouTubers, 2 awesome authors, and a flippin' nostalgic podcast host. So I don't know why I did that to the tune of flippin' 12 Days of Christmas, because it's nowhere near Christmas and we're not talking about anything Christmassy or wintry. We are, however, talking Are You Afraid of the Dark today. So I asked a couple of wonderful content creators to give me a few recommendations of books and or movies that would match the vibe or tone or theme of any Are You Afraid of the Dark episode that they wanted. And man, am I excited for you guys to hear some of their recommendations and suggestions. We've got a couple of movies, but mostly it's book recommendations. And before I go to the intro, I wanted to show you guys I'm wearing my special Are You Afraid of the Dark earrings. And this whole video is in honor of Old School April. If you guys have been following me for a while, you know that Old School April is my thematic old school themed watchathon and readathon where everything I was reading and watching was released in 2002 or earlier, hence old school. So everything I watched and everything I read in the month of April was old school. But it wasn't just me, a lot of other people joined in for the official readathon and watchathon, and I'm so happy. So this whole video is in honor of that. So I thought, what a wonderful way to cap off Old School April and end everything with a wonderful Are You Afraid of the Dark themed collaboration where we just talk about Are You Afraid of the Dark, but it also gives us an excuse to talk about other horror books and movies. So I think it was perfect to kind of mix and match the two things, and it's very appropriate for Old School April and super 90s, by the way, because what's more 90s besides Goosebumps than Are You Afraid of the Dark? So yeah, without further ado, guys, I'm gonna kick it off to the content creators and let them take it away. So after this short intro, we'll go straight to them, but you'll see me again at the very end of the episode. So see you back here at the end, guys.
Welcome, freaks, geeks, and nostalgic 90s nerds to Slime and Slashers, where we talk about all kinds of cool things. Now, it is Old School April, it is Nostalgic April, and Kelsi asked me to come on and talk all things Are You Afraid of the Dark, which is such an amazing show, and if you're a kid that grew up in the 90s, like myself, you are such a big fan. So, she asked me to come on and do a video comparing some episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark to some books that I like, or to some other movies that I like, or to some shows. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. So to do my first comparison, of course, being such a big Goosebumps fan, I had no choice but to bring a friend along with me. So say hi, guys, to my good friend, Slappy. Say hi, Slappy. I think he's a little tired right now. But if you haven't already guessed it, my first comparison, of course, is to The Night of the Living Dummy. Now, there's an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode that if you haven't seen, it is so creepy and I love it. And it is called The Tale of the Dollmaker. Now, there are so many similarities. They both have creepy dolls in them. And if you like Night of the Living Dummy, you're gonna love The Tale of the Dollmaker. It is mega creepy, and there's one scene, I don't want to give it away, but it is the stuff of nightmares. And the thought of getting turned into a doll, I'll leave it at that, I'll say no more, is the most terrifying thing in the world. So go check it out, The Tale of the Dollmaker, if you like Night of the Living Dummy, and vice versa. So for my next one, it's a little obvious, but I just thought it was such a cool comparison. They both had such a similar vibe, and it's probably the most iconic episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark of all time. And so I have in my possession a original first edition comic by Sylvester Uncas himself. Again, #1 edition of The Ghastly Grinner. And if you've never read this comic book, consider yourself lucky. Sylvester Uncas was a legend, okay? And he created one copy, and I have it. This is the only copy in the world. First edition. So, if you've seen this episode and you love Are You Afraid of the Dark and you love the Ghastly Grinner like I do, because it's such an amazing episode, and again, probably the most iconic episode of all time. I mean, this just strikes the fear into every single 90s kid of all time. The bumbling idiots, the blue and green goo and ooze coming out of everyone's mouth, gives me the shivers. So if you like Ghastly Grinner, you would love Attack of the Mutant, which is another Goosebumps book. Now, they're not exactly the same, but they're both about comic books, and they both have kind of a super villain vibe. Now, I don't want to tell you what happens in Attack the Mutant. It seems like a normal superhero story, but it has such a classic R.L. Stine twist, and I really love it. So both of these, I think, are excellent comparisons, and if you like Ghastly Grinner or if you like Attack of the Mutant, I would strongly recommend reading the other or watching the other. I think you'll enjoy it. Okay, so Ghastly Grinner, Attack the Mutant. One of my favorite movies of all time is The Evil Dead. I actually have my prop here. So this is the Necronomicon, and you never read from the book. Okay, if you've seen the movie Evil Dead, never read from the book. This is the actual Necronomicon. And so there's also an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark called The Tale of the Magician's Assistant. Now this episode, The Tale of the Magician's Assistant, always gets me. It always catches me off guard. It's very creepy. It's very, very unnerving. And there's this one scene, not to give too much away, but there's an evil wizard named Nazarek. And at one point, the evil wizard's like floating in the air, dancing, and it is so creepy. And that to me always reminds me of Evil Dead and the Deadites and how they're always just like dangling in the air and doing like kind of weird stuff. And so if you like The Tale of the Magician's Assistant, or you like Evil Dead, I would strongly recommend watching the other, because there are some similarities, I think, and it is totally similar, and I love them both. Again, Evil Dead is one of my favorite movies of all time, and The Tale of the Magician's Assistant is excellent. Great episode. So definitely watch that if you like either of those. And the last one is kind of obvious too, but I just love scarecrows so much. So if you're a fan of The Silent Servant, which is an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode that centers around two kids going to live with their, I believe it's their uncle. I haven't watched it in a minute, but I believe they go to spend some time or the summer with their uncle, and they find this raggedy old scarecrow that eventually they read an evil cantation, and of course, weird things start happening all around them, and it has a similar vibe to The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, which, honestly, the episode of The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, when I was a kid, it gave me the most terrifying nightmares of all time. It kept me up week after week. So if you're a fan of either of those episodes, I strongly recommend taking a look at either of them. And that's it for me. I'm author Robbie Myles. Thanks so much for listening, fellow freaks, geeks, and 90s nostalgic nerds. Rock on, and I will catch you guys later.
Hey friends, Elizabeth Sagewood here, and happy old school April. So thank you so much to Kelsi for inviting me to come onto this collaboration. This was an awesome month, and I had such a blast with old school April, and it's not over yet. So I had the most esteemed pleasure to grow up in the 80s and 90s in Canada. And as far as I'm concerned, us Canadian kids in the 80s and 90s, we had the best shows here in Canada. So we had everything from the Raccoons to the hilarious House of Frightenstein, the Little Vampire. You can't do that on television, the Smoggies, and so much more. So along with all of the amazing channels that we had to grow up with, was, in my opinion, the epitome of all shows, and that was Are You Afraid of the Dark, of course. So I'm so proud that this was a Canadian show, and when I was growing up, it came on a channel called YTV, and I remember when YTV started out way back in, I think, 1988, and YTV is pretty much the Canadian version of Nickelodeon. So we had all of our favorite kids shows, but even more than that, in between all of the shows, especially during the after school period, we had the YTV VJs, so they were video jockeys. So this group of teenagers to young 20s would come on and they would do different skits, or just talk about stuff. They had prizes, people would write into the shows, and they would introduce all of the shows as they were coming on. So YTV was the most fantastic thing to have growing up in Canada, and even more than that, on every single Halloween they did what they called Dark Night. So they had YTV's Dark Night. So this is the logo, the skull logo. I got this from Retro Kid, and it was the most fantastic Halloween party. So I know that all of the kids that I grew up with in the 90s would run home from trick-or-treating. Like, we literally cut trick-or-treating short and we would run home because YTV's Dark Night was starting, and they would show back-to-back episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark? And then the VJs would be dressed up and they would do different Halloween themed skits, and again, they would have all kinds of prizes. People would write into the show and all of this. So when it first started out, like I said, it had back-to-back episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark, new ones that were just being released. So of course, for me, being a horror nerd, I jumped right on that. And then in the subsequent years, as the show went on and it got bigger and bigger, they wrapped in other shows. So there would be Are You Afraid of the Dark, Goosebumps, Buffy, all kinds of different stuff, and they would have this huge Halloween party every year. I would always stay up late. It was a great time. So of course, Are You Afraid of the Dark was one of my favorite shows growing up as a kid. It was super spooky. I think the theme music and the opening sequence of Are You Afraid of the Dark is probably one of the best ones out there. You can debate me if you want, but to me it was just the best, and it's so nostalgic when I watch the show now as an adult and remember all of those fantastic YTV Dark Nights as a kid. So getting on with the book recommendation that I have for you, in season 3 of Are You Afraid of the Dark, there's an episode called The Tale of Watcher's Woods. So this revolved around a girls' summer camp. So the girls would go, and there was a legend of this creepy dude who lived in the woods, this legendary figure, and there was an urban legend that he would steal kids with the help of some witches as well. And there was a legend that 3 of the campers, they were all sisters, were taken, and they were the ones that were transformed into these hags that used to help steal children from the camp that went into the woods, and they got stuck there at night. So as the story goes on, 2 of the girls that are not really friends end up getting lost in the woods, and they meet the Watcher and the witches, and they end up getting captured, and they need to put their heads together to try to figure out how to get out of this situation. And the book that it made me think of was The Time Watchers by Robbie Myles. And this book is just fresh out this year. It just came out in February, and I received an ARC copy of this book. And although these 2 things have many differences, the 2 have some storylines that kind of cross over, and they're very similar. So in Robbie's book, there are a group of friends who are very close, unlike in the episode. They're very, very close, and they're about to have the most epic Halloween weekend. So Halloween in the book falls on a Saturday, so they all get together on Friday, and they're having a sleepover and watching movies and eating pizza, and they're gonna go trick-or-treating together. They're doing all of the things on this fantastic Halloween weekend. And during the sleepover on the Friday night, one of the kids decides to tell the tale of an urban legend about this being called the Time Watcher. And he comes in and snatches kids out of the community and takes them for himself and kind of develops them into his workers. And so when the kids are asleep, one of the boys wakes up and he's being almost called, and he disappears. He's completely disappeared, and the other kids are like, oh my god, we have to go find him. And as they start to dig into this mystery of what happened to their friend, they actually realize that the legend of the Time Watcher is real, and their friend has been captured. And this is such an explosion of Halloween in this book. It's unbelievable. There's witches, there's monsters, there's jack-o'-lanterns, there's trick-or-treating, and anyone who loves nostalgia from growing up in the 80s 80s or 90s when you're having sleepovers and holding the flashlight up to your face and stuff like that, this book is definitely going to be for you. This was such a fantastic adventure. And the two kids that are trying to rescue their friend from the Time Watcher, they get into some really perilous situations, and they need to put their heads together to try to figure out how to get out of this. So it really reminds me of that episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Even though the two girls didn't like each other, they had to put their heads together to try to figure this out, and they had to face their fears to get over the situation and actually get rescued. So like I said, this book is an absolute nostalgia bomb. Anybody who's into old school April and loves those nostalgic feels from the 80s and 90s and grew up with shows like Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark, and you can even see reflections of other things like Ernest Scared Stupid and Buffy and even Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory at some point in here. So I would highly recommend picking up this book. I really enjoyed it. This was a 4.5-star read for me, and I know that any kid or kid at heart is going to really enjoy this. And as soon as I started rewatching some of the old episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark, I immediately made the connection between the Tale of the Watcher's Woods and The Time Watchers by Robbie Myles. So that's it for me. I hope you guys had an amazing old school April. And again, thank you, Kelsi, for inviting me to come on the video. This was a lot of fun to research, and I love giving recommendations for indie authors. So until we meet again, stay spooky, everybody. Bye.
Hey there, groovy ghoulies and slimy slashers. It's your demented DJ, the Cool Ghoul, from channel Cool Ghoul Radio. A big thanks to Kelsi, your horrid hostess, for inviting me on this collaboration. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for shows like Are You Afraid of the Dark? It was a huge inspiration for the format of my own YouTube show. Now, let's dive in. The Tale of the Hatching is submitted for approval by David, who's feeling a little alienated at his new school. It's an out-of-this-world episode where two siblings discover the headmasters of their new school are gooey green music-hating aliens who need a classroom's worth of hypnotized nannies to raise their eggs. It's a goofy story and a lot of fun, especially if you like giant space dinosaurs. If stories of alien invasions in a school setting are up your alley, then I'd recommend reading Bruce Coville's My Teacher is an Alien, a fun late 80s, early 90s book series about, you guessed it, a gooey green music-hating alien. This time a trio of adventurous youth try to figure out what the alien Broxholm, posing as her new teacher, would want with the smartest, most average, and worst students in their classroom. The series is an easy-breezy grade school read, and one of my childhood favorites. The 80s-90s edition features an eye-catching cover that's sadly lacking with the new cartoony edition. The book has been updated to fit the times, with the 1-hour photo plot point being replaced by the use of a camera's memory card. So, I suggest picking up the original editions for the nostalgic buzz, but they're worth picking up for the covers alone. That's it for me, bloody buddies. If you enjoy shows like Are You Afraid of the Dark and Tales from the Crypt, then check me out over on Cool Ghoul Radio. Cool with a K. Thanks again, Kelsi.
Hey guys, my name's Amber and my channel here on YouTube is Secondhand Reader. And I'm very excited because Kelsi has asked that I make a short video recommending some books based on the vibes of Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes. Are You Afraid of the Dark was a show in the 90s that I just soaked up as a kid. It was one of my favorites, honestly. So let's just get into the episodes. Okay, so the first episode that I want to talk about is The Tale of the Watcher's Woods. This is in season 3, episode 3, I believe. Season 3 is one of my favorite seasons of all of them. This one's really cool because it's about a girls' summer camp. Supposedly 3 girls went missing in the past. The present, the 2 girls get lost in the woods. Things happen. I love anything to do with the woods, nature. It really creeps me out, the thought of being lost, you know, and not being able to find your way back. So I have 2 recommendations for this episode. Okay, so the first one is a thriller, and that is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. This one doesn't have like the storytelling vibe, but it has the summer camp. Girls go missing in the past. They have to figure out what happened to them. This is probably one of my favorite Riley Sagers. He writes really good thrillers, kind of action-packed thrillers. And this one just, I listened to it on audio. It's just really creepy, and just the thought of the things happening is really creepy. Anyways, so yeah, that's The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. And the other one is actually a short story, and I have 2 Darcy Coates short stories on this list, but she is the queen of horror. I really do believe that. So the short story that I want to recommend for this episode is Whose Woods Are These? Sorry, I'll put a picture. This story, when I read it, really sat with me. It is so creepy. Like, it just sinks in and just keeps on giving. It's about a girl who is going into these woods that her and her father used to go to when she was a kid. Her father has passed away, so she kind of wants to celebrate him by spending a night camping in the woods. And there is something else in these woods, and it is terrifying. Her descriptions in this story are so unsettling, and up until the very end of this story, you are just on edge the whole time. If you haven't read Darcy Coates, please go and try any of her stories, but definitely this one. This one gives you nature, woods, creepy vibes. Highly recommend. The next episode that I want to talk about of Are You Afraid of the Dark is The Tale of the Curious Camera. This is in season 3, episode 9, and this is about a boy that comes across an antique camera, and when he takes pictures, it might like make things happen, predict that, you know, bad things are going to happen. This is a really interesting trope to me in horror, and I am constantly looking for more that has this trope in it. But I do have 2 short stories or novellas to recommend to you for this feeling, atmosphere of this type of story. And these are both adult also. I feel like I recommend adult stories because I am an adult now, so I can kind of carry over that vibe of Are You Afraid of the Dark, that scariness and uneasiness that I got as a kid, into my adult reading. But the first novella that I want to recommend for this story is The Sundog by Stephen King. It is the last novella in the 4 Past Midnight collection. And it's about a kid in Castle Rock, Maine that comes across a Polaroid camera, and every time he takes a picture, this dog is just getting closer and closer, and it's typical Stephen King, creepy, uneasy, just you're feeling the terror of this dog coming towards you the whole time you're reading this. But it's such a good story. I highly recommend, 5 stars. Check out The Sundog by Stephen King. And the last one that I'm going to recommend to you is another Darcy Coates short story that I believe is only available on Kindle, but it might be available in physical form now. I'm not sure. I'll have to look. But it's called Ghost Camera. And it's typical Darcy Coates. Creepy, uneasy. It's a girl who finds, again, a Polaroid camera. This camera actually, like, traps the ghost kind of in it, so they're able to come through this camera and hunt their prey, which of course is humans. And these are not nice ghosts. They're not, no, it's not family friendly by any means. But a girl finds the camera and releases the ghost, and yeah, this is actually one that I have not read yet, but I am actually going to read next month. So it just gives me, every time I read the synopsis, it just gives me those vibes. So yeah, I hope that these are some good recommendations for you all if you haven't read any of them. I highly recommend the Darcy Coates short stories. They are just brilliant. And thank you again to Kelsi for asking me to make recommendations. I love the 90s. Are You Afraid of the Dark? Just makes my heart warm every time I watch it. And yeah, thank you so much. And I hope everyone's reading something wonderful. And I'll see you next time.
Hey creeps, my name is Cameron Chaney, author of Autumn Crow and the host of Library Macabre on YouTube. And I am very grateful to Kelsi for inviting me on her channel today to talk about some movies that are kind of in vein of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Maybe a little more adult, just a lot more adult, but very much in tone of Are You Afraid of the Dark? So I have two different movies that I want to talk about. The first one is called Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. This is an 80s supernatural slasher film that is a sequel to the movie Prom Night with Jamie Lee Curtis, even though the two have nothing in common other than dealing with prom. This movie is about a girl who, in the 50s, at her prom, died on prom night. She caught on fire and it was a whole big thing, and the girl herself was very mean-spirited, very revolutionary for her time in the 50s, I will just say. There was quite a bit of foul play surrounding the death of this girl, so obviously her spirit is hanging on and wanting vengeance. So now we fast forward to the 80s. We are following another girl who is getting ready for her prom, and she accidentally releases the spirit of this girl from the 50s who had passed away. And things go from there. And it's awesome and amazing and just one of my favorite horror films, and definitely one of my favorite sequels of all time. It's just so good, and the tone, this movie just oozes atmosphere. I love the tone of this film, and it definitely reminds me a lot of Are You Afraid of the Dark in terms of the cinematography and a lot of the visuals. Now, this is a much more adult version of Are You Afraid of the Dark, I will say. So don't show this to your kids. Please don't. Watch this after they go to bed. It is, it is an 80s slasher film, so there's sex and nudity and language and gore and violence and all of that kind of stuff. But there is a scene in this movie that every single time I see it, I'm like, God, that's so Are You Afraid of the Dark? It's crazy. So there is a scene involving a rocking horse, and I don't want to give anything away about the scene, but a rocking horse, the image of the rocking horse is very much like Are You Afraid of the Dark, especially the episode The Tale of the Silver Sight, which is a 3-part episode following the Midnight Society, kind of investigating this story that's starting to actually come to life. And there's a lot of imagery involving a carousel. So anything with carousels or rocking horses, they remind me of Are You Afraid of the Dark? And this scene in this movie really has that. Now, fun fact, this is something I actually learned years after seeing the movie, but the producer of Hello, Mary Lou is actually a producer on Are You Afraid of the Dark? So that probably explains a lot of the similarities there in tone. So if you've not checked out Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2, you don't have to go and watch Prom Night, though I do recommend it because it's still a really good movie. It's really fun. But the second one, even better. So now I'm going to be talking about a movie from 1994, and that is Ice Cream Man. And I actually have the Blu-ray edition of this one. That's the only thing about Hello, Mary Lou, is that there actually is not a really good Blu-ray of it. I believe you can get it on DVD, but it's not a good quality print. You can stream it, and I would recommend doing that. Fortunately, you can stream it pretty easily, so that's a good thing. Ice Cream Man stars Clint Howard and follows Clint Howard, who is the Ice Cream Man, and he is a little bit unhinged, and he may or may not be kidnapping kids. And the whole mystery of the movie is like, is he turning them into ice cream? Like, what's going on? I won't say what actually happens. This is not a good movie by any means. It's really cheesy, really dumb, but really fun. I enjoy it. I think it's a fun movie. It's got some good gross gore effects and just goes completely off the rails in the later half of the movie. But even though this movie is a lot more adult, has the feel of Are You Afraid of the Dark, because we are in the early 90s. The fashion of the kids is very much like kind of Canadian-ish. So it definitely looks like these kids are in an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark. There are a lot of scenes involving these kids playing on the playground and getting ice cream. It feels like an episode of the show. So I would definitely recommend this. And I think it's really funny that on YouTube, somebody actually did a Goosebumps version of this movie where they put the Goosebumps intro on it and like the Goosebumps credits, and they made it feel like an episode of Goosebumps. And there are people in the comments who are like, oh my God, I remember this episode from when I was a kid. And I'm like, no, you don't, because it wasn't an episode of Goosebumps. It's Ice Cream Man, starring Clint Howard. Not a Goosebumps episode. Feels very much like Goosebumps. Feels even more like Are You Afraid of the Dark? So I highly recommend checking out Ice Cream Man from 1994. And that is all that I have for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you again to Kelsi for inviting me on the channel. I really, really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun, and I will catch you later. Bye.
Hello, my name is Kelly and my channel is KellyHookedOnBooks. Kelsi asked me to make a short video about Are You Afraid of the Dark and suggesting any books that I have or know of that have a similar vibe. I was a child of the 90s, so Are You Afraid of the Dark was a big part of my childhood. I remember I believe it was Saturday, Snick on Nickelodeon. There was All That. Are You Afraid of the Dark? Those are the only ones that I really remember. So I looked forward to those every week. I feel like that is a main reason why I enjoy horror in my reading life. My parents didn't really watch horror movies, so I think that played a significant role in my choice of reading and entertainment as I grew up and now as an adult. So, for some suggestions, now most of these are most of them are similar to an aspect to certain episodes. So, if you want the overall feel of Are You Afraid of the Dark, where there is a storytelling aspect, I don't have this one, but I will put it in. I would suggest The Midnight Club by Christopher Pike. This is a setting at a hospice for teenagers, and they come together at midnight and tell different tales. They will tell extended ones, so it'll be multiple sittings for one story, but I got that kind of vibe from that book. The next one is The Tale of the Prom Queen, where there is a prom queen in the episode. Believe she dies or something along those lines, waiting for her prom date to pick her up. So for that, I would suggest the Fear Street book, The Prom Queen by R.L. Stine. There is a prom queen, prom dance aspect to it. The storyline is different. The plot has more to do with a killer killing the prom queen nominees, but it gave me the prom vibes that I got from the Are You Afraid of the Dark episode with the prom queen. The next one I have is similar to, and the setting is similar, is The Tale of Laughing in the Dark, and that is with the clown, and they go in and they take his nose, but there's the whole funhouse aspect. And for that, I would suggest Found House by Diane Ho. Now, this is not really supernatural. These are more of a people out for other people situation, but it is a similar setting as that episode. A lot of accidents start happening and people are getting hurt and dying. So these books are a little bit darker than the Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes. So, and then the last one I'm suggesting, and somebody may someone else may suggest this because I know that we talked about it in Kelsey's Discord. The Tale of the Pinball Wizard. I don't recall the total summary or plot of that episode, but I know it was set in a mall. So I suggest for that setting, The Mall by Richie Tankersley Cusick. It is set in the mall in the heyday of the mall life, where everybody was going to the mall every day, everybody worked at the mall, everything was set around the mall on the weekends and the nighttime for all the teenagers. I know in the episode, I believe it's at nighttime, so it's a little bit different, but this is good for a mall vibe of the 90s. So that's all I have. I do want to thank Kelsi for inviting me to be part of this. All of April with this Old School April has really been nostalgic and brought back all the 90s, some 80s vibes. And I guess that's all I got. Bye.
Welcome back to the Panic Room, everyone, and to a very special video today. So Kelsi put out a call in her tag video when she made her own original tag, which was the Are You Afraid of the Dark versus Goosebumps. You've seen that on my channel already. I did that and had an absolute ball. So she put out a call in that video for creators to recommend books and, you know, maybe even other media based on Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes, you know, something that would go together. And I actually have two for you today. So let's get started. So the first recommendation is based on the episode, The Tale of Laughing in the Dark. So in this episode, you have a young man who gets dared to go into this particular carnival ride. And all of his friends are talking about how, like, this carnival ride is haunted by this clown by the name of Zebo. So a little bit of backstory is, like, Zebo apparently got stiffed some money, and I want to say, like, he burned it down or something like that, because they give the little detail that he liked to smoke cigars. And of course our main guy is not having it. So he decides, you know, he's gonna prove himself that, you know, he's not a wuss, and he goes in and he steals the nose off of the Zebo, like, figure that's in this ride. And of course antics ensue. He is essentially getting stalked by this entity, ghost, whatever you want to call him. Now, the one scene that always stuck out to me for this particular episode is where I think his mom tells him that he has, like, food in the microwave, and he goes to open it up and it's just all this smoke rolls out, and it's like a casserole dish full of cigars. Yeah, I remember being a kid like, oh, that's gross. And really the episode ends with, you know, the kid, you know, kind of coming to believe in Zebo, taking the nose back with a box of cigars, like, please leave me the hell alone. And the guy who kind of, like, instructs that ride, who's kind of been creepy this whole time, is like, ha ha ha, when you're laughing in the dark, you know, says his little line, and he's smoking a cigar, which leads you to believe that it was him, like he's Zebo, but it's never came out and said, so it's very, very ambiguous in its ending. Okay, so on to the book recommendation for this episode. I am going to recommend The Devil's Laughter. Now, this works on a few levels simply because, you know, it is kind of situated around laughter. Now, I will tell you straight up that the Are You Afraid of the Dark episode beats the hell out of this book as far as story goes. Now, laughter kind of sort of figures into this book. You do have entities, you know, in some cases stalking characters. So there's a lot of similarities. Plus, I mean, come on, let's look at the cover. It's a clown, right? So yes, do I think that they go well together? Yeah. If you ask me which of the two is better, it's the Are You Afraid of the Dark episode. But that is my recommendation. For the Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, The Tale of Laughing in the Dark, we have the book, The Devil's Laughter. Okay, so on to our second recommendation. So for the Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, we are going to be talking about The Tale of the Water Demons. So you have this tale of this guy who goes to this big mansion to make a delivery, and he sees that there's this captain, you know, this elderly man who has this big collection of all of this, like, memorabilia, these antiques, you know, pocket watches and bracelets and, I mean, you name it. And the captain is, I guess, what you would describe as kind of neurotic, because the teenager, the boy, is kind of just writes him off, like, oh, he's crazy. And you find out over the course of the episode that this captain is plagued by water demons that come out of the ocean when he falls asleep. And, you know, this man has been plagued for so long that he actually has timed how long it takes the water demons to get like from the sea to his door. I want to say it's something like 15 minutes. So this guy has not had a full night's sleep in ages. No wonder he's crazy, right? Our teenager actually swipes one of the, I think it's a pocket watch, I'm pretty sure it was pocket watch, out of this guy's collection. Well, lo and behold, the demons start coming after him too. Pretty much the course of the episode is them trying to find a way to, you know, stop this action from happening. And, you know, you find out that the captain, you know, he's feeling guilty, you know, oh, I took this from this wreck and all this. And they get the idea like, well, if we take it back, maybe the water demons will leave you alone. You know, they hatch this whole plan about how they're going to load the whole collection onto a boat, and somebody has to stay at the dock to keep this captain awake while our main guy, the one who stole the pocket watch, goes out to dump everything. Well, you know, you see him dumping, you know, buckets and buckets and boxes of all of this guy's collection, but the water demons start to come after him because the captain falls asleep. And it takes him a second, because I even remember being a kid, like, you stole the pocket watch, throw that back in, because it takes the guy a second. He's like, oh, wow, I stole this. So the whole collection hasn't been given back to them yet, right? And I'll never forget it. He's standing on this boat and he pulls the pocket watch out. He's like, is this what you want? Stop talking to him. Just toss it in the ocean. They're going to kill your ass. What is it with people talking to the bad guy and stuff like this? You know, essentially, you know, it wraps up, of course, you know, there's the signature Are You Afraid of the Dark kind of, you know, tale and ending. But, you know, it's a good story. The more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know, I really think beyond being like a fear of water episode, you know, you have this whole idea of this captain not being able to fall asleep because the demons are going to come after him. How perfect is that for a scary kid's show? You know, something coming to get you, some nightmarish kind of entity coming to get you specifically is every kid's nightmare. And this episode was that in the flesh, so to speak. All right, so my book recommendation for this episode is actually going back to one of my very first reviews, very early on in the Panic Room, and it is The Drowning Kind. Now, obviously, the connection is relatively obvious. You know, they both have to deal with water. But more than that, they both have to deal with entities in the water. Drowning Kind is beautifully executed in a way that will, even if you're not afraid of water, it can kind of give you that tingle up your spine. It describes the water itself so beautifully. I remember, I'm pretty sure I said in that review that it describes the water almost like a living thing. But I really think that if you are afraid of water, if you're afraid of like the unknown even, I think that The Drowning Kind is really going to be one that you can sink your teeth into. It has all of those elements of, you know, family strife and monstrous kind of things that you're not really sure, you know, what to think of, you know, up until the very end, you know? And, you know, like I said, the whole idea of how the water is its own character, its own living thing in The Drowning Kind is beautifully executed. And I really think that these two dovetail beautifully together, not even so much as, oh, they're both about water, but they both bring that, like, fear of the unknown, fear of being, like, stalked or wanted or desired by something evil or something that you're not sure how you feel about it. You know, those are both embodied so well in both this book, The Drowning Kind, and this episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? And I know it sounds weird because, you know, this book is like an adult book and then it's a kid's show, but Are You Afraid of the Dark was weird like that. You know, I really feel like that, you know, beyond being a kid's show, it had some damn fine storylines. It really did. Some of the creepiest, best executed storylines to date for any show like that, I think. But I'm also a huge fan. But really, if you don't take any other recommendations, I highly recommend The Drowning Kind and The Tale of the Water Demons. It's almost like they were written for each other in a lot of ways. They both have the same undertones of just fear of something coming out of the depths. I have had a ball making these videos about Are You Afraid of the Dark. It was such a phenomenon in my childhood. Kelsi, thank you. Thank you for putting out a call like this, especially for us 90s kids. These videos have just been so much fun to make. So thank you, Kelsi. And until next time, bye for now.
Hey there, all you Slime and Slashers fans. This is Brett from Splat Podcast. Here's our logo in case you haven't seen it. I've been just invited here by Kelsi today to share a recommendation that I had for anything that's related to Are You Afraid of the Dark that I enjoy. And I actually came across these. You may remember them from the 90s because they're actually banned from many elementary schools for being too scary. But we have scary stories to tell in the dark. These are the reissued books that came out around 2018, 2019. I have all three of them actually. And, you know, aside from the fact that they have like a horror anthology format to them, it's just a bunch of short stories together, similar to how Are You Afraid of the Dark has different types of horror stories all stringed along throughout the seasons. And I really like them because they don't pull any punches, very much like Are You Afraid of the Dark tales. Like it gets very vivid with the imagery. You really get sucked into the words and where the story is going. And then usually at the last moment, you hear like a wild twist that many times you don't expect coming. And, you know, if you like Are You Afraid of the Dark specifically, and the format of the show, this is up your alley. I know some stories in here in particular come to mind, like there's one called The Haunted House that's in here that reminds me a lot of like a combination of the Tale of the Lonely Ghost and Tale of the Prom Queen, because there's like a mystery involved that's tied to a ghost, and she needs to have like someone who comes across her solve the mystery for her so that she can be laid to rest, or, you know, have her spirit move on to the afterlife. And I know many people recognize this book series for like the chilling illustrations that go along with the words as well. So I'm sure if you're into scary stuff from the 90s, you'll love this book series. You know, there's another one in particular that comes to mind called The Big Toe that is actually reminiscent of the Tale of the Laughing in the Dark featuring Zebo, one of Are You Afraid of the Dark's most popular tales. And what I like about The Big Toe is that, you know, obviously the premise is kind of gross, that this kid finds a toad that's out in the woods, takes it home and tries to make it out of a stew. But when he later finds out that he did that, someone's coming after him for that toe. And they never really see who it is until it's too late. So it definitely has a similar vibe to, you know, Zebo coming after Josh in Tale of Laughing in the Dark for his nose. But we never actually see him like in person per se, like coming at Josh. And it's that like suspense and that anticipation that really, really hooks you in. And, you know, these are just a few examples where they connect to Are You Afraid of the Dark. I'm sure you can find many more if you go through like all three of these books and, you know, notice the connections with all of them. It's just a great read. So I highly recommend getting, you know, all three of these. And the best part is they're only about like 90 pages long each, if you exclude like the bibliography and the references in the back for the folklore tales. So you can easily get this read in like a weekend. I'm going to reread it again this weekend too, because I love these tales very much, and it really does a great job of stirring my imagination in terms of like horror and scary stories and ghost tales and all that stuff. So yeah, pick them up, read these, go watch some Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes in a dark room one Saturday night, and you're just going to have a blast scaring yourself silly. So yeah, thank you, Kelsi, for inviting me to share my recommendations for Are You Afraid of the Dark. And check out Splat Podcast, which is available on YouTube, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, really wherever you can find podcasts. We currently have 20 episodes under our belt. We cover a wide range of 90s Nickelodeon topics. Some of the more obscure ones too, like we just did an episode on Nick Takes Over Your School, which was a sweepstakes they did. And we're going to be doing something Legends of the Hidden Temple related really soon. So look forward to that if you're into that game show. All right, Slimesters and Gackoids, that's what we call our listeners at Splat Attack. Catch you later, and back to Slime and Slashers.
Thank you for kicking it back over to me, Brett, and thank you to every single person who contributed to this video. I'm very excited to do my first collab, and I think it turned out wonderful. I really appreciate each and every one of you filming a clip for this. It's been awesome. I also want to make sure to tell you guys who are watching right now to please follow each and every person who contributed to this video. I have linked all of their information and all of their stuff below. So we had different type of content creators featured in this video. We had one podcaster, we had multiple booktubers / YouTubers. we had all sorts of people. We had 2 authors, by the way. So yes, Elizabeth mentioned one of Robbie's books, The Time Watchers, and the funny thing is, so she didn't coordinate that with me. She didn't even know Robbie was going to be in the video, but Robbie was our first person that we heard from in the collaboration, and yes, he's an author. So not only did he write The Time Watchers, which I read, I also read his other book, Don't Call at All. Both are fantastic, and I would definitely recommend picking both of them up if you like middle grade reads, because these are wonderful, very nostalgic feeling. Even though they're set in modern times, there is like a nostalgia feel to them. So yes, wonderful stuff. So that was one of our authors that were featured in this collab. The other, the wonderful Cameron Chaney, aka Library Macabre, from that YouTube channel. Please check him out. Not only does he have this book out available, he's also working on a new book, Autumn Crow High, which should be coming out very soon. Very excited about that. But this is marvelous. I totally recommend picking this up. It's for older readers, but it does have a nostalgia feel, and it does have like a very autumn feel, hence the name Autumn Crow. It's marvelous. All right, guys, so yes, check that out. Also, Cameron has a Patreon too. And of course, we had a whole bunch of YouTubers like Cool Ghoul, Elizabeth, Amber, Kelly, Pax Panic. Please subscribe to all of their channels. And also, I will link their Instagrams as well, so go check them out and follow them on there too. And not to forget, the person who just kicked it back over to me, Brett, who has a marvelous Nickelodeon-themed podcast. We are talking about his podcast, the Splat Attack podcast. It's wonderful. He's very knowledgeable about all things Nickelodeon, so check him out, and he also has a Patreon for that podcast. And I will also link his Instagram. He's also a fantastic artist, by the way, and does a lot of Nickelodeon type of 90s art that is just like bonkers. It's so good. It's like, it makes your mind explode. It's so good. So I honestly can't say enough how honored I am to have all these people featured on my channel for this video. So thanks, guys. And now into my recommendations before we wrap things up. So it's been a fun old school April so far. And as I said in the beginning, this is a great way to cap it all off. I have 2 books to recommend to you and 1 movie, and they all relate to different episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark, so we'll get right into it. So the first episodes that I want to mention of Are You Afraid of the Dark are The Tale of the Dream Machine and The Tale of the Bookish Babysitter. They're both very, very similar, and for that reason, I'm going to recommend one book that fits the vibe and tone of both of those episodes at once, and that book is Book of the Damned by D.A. Fowler. I just read this for Old School April. It was part of my Old School Readathon TBR that I set up for myself, and this is a ball. Don't get me wrong, it is brutal, it is gory, there's lots of body horror in here, but it also is a lot of fun, and it's got like a lot of humor in it as well, but it is bleak overall. I will give you that warning. You know, go in knowing that it's kind of heavy, but there's also some humor sprinkled in throughout, but it's kind of twisted humor. I guess people like me would like that, though. Obviously, I did end up liking that. All right, so the essential premise of this is we have this book, which whoever reads the book, they end up almost getting transported in their mind into the story. So they start to live out the story in their mind, almost like a real life walking hallucination type of deal. So what's the deal with the book? You know, why is it doing this to people? That's the essential mystery surrounding this. And we're following one person and their struggle on how to stop this whole hallucination from happening, because it's happening to them. So yes, I don't want to get too much into it. Our main character's name is Rosalind. That's who's experiencing basically being transported into the book. And it's not only a hallucination, it makes them like, you know, kind of flail their arms and do a whole bunch of stuff, which could lead to dangerous things happening in real life. So that's why it's a dangerous concept, and it's very eerie and scary, and it leads to crazy things. But yes, it is so much fun. I had a blast with this book, and I actually buddy read it with my good friend Alex the Booktubers. Also check out her channel too. So she is marvelous, and we both loved this book. This would totally fit both of the episodes I mentioned of Are You Afraid of the Dark. And let me kind of go in a little bit further about the episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark and why you'll end up seeing why it matches perfectly what I described the book is about. Alright, so The Tale of the Dream Machine specifically. This is one of Kiki's stories, but she has a sore throat, so she cannot tell the story. She typed it out, and she has Gary read it for her, which is really thematic to the whole tone of the episode. So I'm going to read you the episode intro before they start to tell the tale, and you can see why, once I read this, how it fits in with the vibe and theme of Book of the Damned, and Book of the Damned fits the theme of this episode, so both things fit. Alright, so here's the intro.
Writing a story down on paper is very different than telling it out loud. When a story's on paper, you can feel it, you can see it, and others can read it as well. But beware, for once a story is written, it no longer belongs to the author, but has a life of its own. And for some stories, that can be a very dangerous life indeed.
So yes, it perfectly fits with the vibe of people who read the Book of the Damned get transported into the story. The story has a life of its own. They're experiencing that story. It's a very dangerous type of story to be experiencing and living. So it fits right there. But essentially, the premise of the actual tale that is told in this Are You Afraid of the Dark episode is we've got this main character, Sean, who finds this mysterious typewriter in his new house. I say new house, it's actually like an older house that his parents bought in the hopes of fixing up. But the typewriter has obviously been there for a while. Once Sean starts to write stories on this typewriter, he notices that strange things start to happen. For instance, whoever he writes about in his story dreams the story. So he writes about this girl he knows and has a crush on, and she dreams about what he writes, and he finds that out later the next day at school when she tells him about the nightmare she had, which is just like his story he wrote. So yeah, that's kind of neat. But later in the episode, we also come to find out that not only is that going on, but if someone reads the story, then people get transported into the story and like disappear from where they are physically, and they're literally physically in the story. So here is a back and forth section of dialogue between Sean and his friend when they discover that he can basically make people dream whatever he wants. So Sean says,
I wrote it, and you guys dreamed it.
It's got some kind of power.
Is that possible? Could this be a dream machine?
This is like power. Whose head do you want to get into first?
We've got to think about this.
What's to think? We can terrorize everybody.
Which is also kind of like Book of the Damned. This whole section of dialogue back and forth is very reminiscent of things that are happening in this book. Alright, in the next episode I want to talk about, which is also very similar to the tone and theme of Book of the Damned, and if you haven't read Book of the Damned, but you like these Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes, I think you would like this book, and vice versa. If you've read the book but haven't seen these episodes, you would love these episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark. So, The Tale of the Bookish Babysitter is a tale told by Betty Ann, who's one of the best storytellers on Are You Afraid of the Dark, by the way, and the intro to this episode, where she introduces the tale, also represents a similarity to the book, and you'll see what I mean once I read the intro. So Betty Ann says,
My story is about stories. We tell all kinds of horror stories about demons and ghosts and stuff, but no matter what a story's about, there's only one thing that makes it really scary: your imagination. If you're really into a story, you become a part of it, and you start to imagine what horrible thing could be sneaking around the corner, ready to pounce. And you start to wonder what you do if you are the one facing the monster. It's your imagination that gets you into a story, and unless you're very careful, you might need your imagination to get out.
Again, that is so like Book of the Damned. If you've read it, you know what I mean, but if you haven't read it, this is why, if you're familiar with the Tale of the Bookish Babysitter and like it, I think you'd really dig Book of the Damned for sure. And at one point, the babysitter in the story, so the essential tale itself is about this babysitter who brings like these, it appears like they're magic, so these magical books to a babysitting gig, and this kid is like a snot-nosed brat. He's a frickin' punk. I don't know, he's a very unruly kid. A lot of kids in Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes are just horrible brats, and this kid is no different. He doesn't want to read, he doesn't want to turn off the TV, and he doesn't even want to deal with the babysitter. He's annoyed, and he's very rude to her. Anyway, she comes over, she's like, just read a few sentences out loud, and then you can do whatever you want. Well, he starts to read the story, and things start to happen. Elements of the story are coming into his real life and are like infiltrating the house that, you know, they're both in. So it's kind of cool because it's like the story is coming alive because he just read a few sentences. And then later on in the episode, he actually gets transported into like another place, and he's like acting out and living out the story and almost writing his own story. So it's kind of cool because the babysitter says at one point, it's your story now. So it's, at the same time, at the very end, it also seemed like it wasn't actually happening. It was almost like in his mind. We kind of get that hint at the end, which is not really a spoiler. You don't know anything else that happens. So the whole idea of being transported into the story, that totally fits with Book of the Damned. So yes, those episodes go with this, and vice versa, so check it out. And my second book suggestion is to go with the episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? It's a very weird and corny episode, but still, I personally like it. So The Tale of the Badge, which I just recently watched, actually, for the very first time. It was wild and fun and a little zany because the flippin' villain was ridiculous. Alright, so the essential premise is we've got this girl named Gwen, and it's her birthday, but she's feeling low. She's feeling like her brother steals all the thunder from her, and that there's nothing special about her. So it's a bummer birthday for her. It's like a downer. But her grandmother, Willie, who is Irish, by the way, she's all like, "Oh, lass, you're more special than you appear." Something like that. Anyway, that's paraphrasing. I don't even know if she uses the word lass, but she definitely had like an Irish accent. But so Willie is saying, no, there is stuff that's special about you, and she gives her this gift. And the gift is like a flute, a necklace, and like a stone. And the grandmother has to go away to some place before she can explain more about the gift. And Gwen is stuck babysitting her little brother. The little brother gets into mischief and starts to mess with this box Willie was going to give Gwen, and he starts to basically F things up, essentially, and he unleashes this ancient frickin' Irish lore spirit, I don't know what it is, creature, the Badge. So that's where we are. Things progress. It's really cool. So essentially, the story surrounds Irish lore and this ancient spirit or creature that is trapped. And also Irish powers and stuff. So, to go with the style and vibe and theme of Tale of the Badge, if you like that type of thing, I would suggest the book The Keepsake by Paul Husson. And yes, this is an older horror book. This is actually considered a paperback from hell type of book, but this was really good. I just read this for St. Patrick's Day this past year, and it was marvelous. It was wonderful. I really had a good time with it. The reason it matches the tone and vibe of the Tale of the Badge is both things feature absurdist antagonists, or you could even say absurdist villains, because yes, I would call both of the things villains. The Badge, I don't know, it's a hilarious villain, but yes, it's a villain. So The Keepsake is about this couple who find this Irish stone, and they bring it back to America to come back home, and it's like a souvenir from their trip. Well, lo and behold, this stone is a cursed Irish stone, and it's actually an evil stone and a killer stone, we later come to find out. And the reason why, it's actually not a stone as it appears to be, it's an actual ancient, like, Irish spirit or demon. That's not a spoiler. It's kind of known in the very beginning of the book that that's what that is. It's definitely not what it appears to be. It's like some kind of old Irish lore that's like not to be trifled with. But these people just think it's some stone, they bring it back, and then bad things start happening in their lives. Accidents befall a whole bunch of people they know, etc., etc. Shit hits the fan, essentially. So yeah, I would totally recommend this, because yes, the two antagonists are similar, and that the idea of them are absurd. They've got one flipping the tail of the badge. This thing looks like a freaking human badger. I don't know. It's very strange. And this is like a stone that comes out and comes alive and kills people. Also absurd seeming. But still, The Keepsake was a lot of fun. It was really thematic for St. Patrick's Day. And that brings me to my second point, is that both stories, of course, feature Irish type of characters and Irish lore. So yes, this is perfect for St. Patty's Day, and so is The Tale of the Badge. And both things match each other. So yes, if you've seen The Tale of the Badge, why not check out The Keepsake? I really enjoyed the read. That's my last book suggestion, and on to my very final suggestion, which is a movie. So, the last episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark that I want to talk about is The Tale of the Crimson Clown, which I really like. It's very scary in terms of the idea of a doll coming to life is spooky no matter what. But this is a clown doll, which makes it extra spooky and extra terrifying. So essentially our premise is we've got this freaking brat, again, another brat in an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, named Sam. And Sam is just a pain, and he's really causing trouble for his big brother, who's trying to get their mother a nice birthday present. Sam is freaking messing things up left and right, is just being a flippin' jerk. Anyway, Mike gets fed up with all of this, and he's like, you better watch out, or you're gonna have to face the Crimson Clown, and he's gonna be after you if you don't shape up. And basically, the Crimson Clown, they're in this antique store, and it's just this clown that Sam keeps looking at. It's almost like he's transfixed by it. Mike notices this, and that's why he makes up, oh, you better watch out for the Crimson Clown. Well, later on, Sam starts to see the Crimson Clown all around his room, and, you know, when he's asleep, stuff like that. And also, there's parts in the episode where the Crimson Clown is huge, walking around like life-size. And I thought that was like the best part of the episode. And there's some parts also that Sam gets almost tied up with ribbon, which I found really, really funny, because I recommend Dolls if you like The Tale of the Crimson Clown, because there's also a giant teddy bear in Dolls, so another giant type of stuffed creature that isn't supposed to be real but comes alive, and he's wearing a ribbon around his neck, kind of like the Crimson Clown uses ribbon to tie up Sam. So very reminiscent. Also, there's plenty of smaller dolls that come to life, hence the name Dolls, in this movie. So yes, this is also one of the movies I'm rewatching for Old School April. I'm actually going to rewatch it on the last day of April. I'm filming this, you know, obviously before April ends, so I haven't rewatched it yet, but I've seen it a couple of years ago, and it's fantastic. It's total cheese, and it would fit with the cheesiness of Are You Afraid of the Dark, because Are You Afraid of the Dark is really scary at times, especially back when we were kids. It was definitely scary, but it's also cheesy at times too. Like just Sam and his whole demeanor in this episode of The Tale of the Crimson Clown can be a little cheesy, but there are legit scary parts to the episode as well. So just like with the episode, Dolls has some cheesiness, but also some terrifying stuff and some cool effect type of stuff too. So I would totally recommend this if you like that episode, or recommend the episode if you like this. You could do like a mini marathon and have a whole thematic day of doll type of shows and movies, and you could actually add in more than just dolls and, you know, check out Annabelle and stuff of that nature. You could really stack it up and just watch a whole bunch of doll themed stuff. There's even another episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark where it's called The Tale of the Doll Maker, and that one's creepy too, but it's different. It doesn't match the movie Dolls as well as the Crimson Clown does. That one I think really matches the tone and vibe of the movie Dolls. So yes, check that out. That is my last suggestion. And again, I want to say thank you once more to everyone who participated in this collab video. Thank you guys so very much. It means a lot to me. And thank you guys who are watching at home right now. That also means a lot to me. Please make sure to follow everyone that is linked in the description below. Also, if you're not following me, please subscribe. That would mean a lot. And also leave a like. That helps with the algorithms and the analytics and all of that stuff. I hate to talk about that, but it is what it is. Also, leave a comment. Did you like these suggestions? If you could think of a good book or movie that fits the vibe of an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, comment that below, because I'd love to know what you guys think and suggest. Alright guys, for this time, that's it for me, and for everyone else as well. Till next time, you guys know what you can do. I say it each and every time. Keep on killing it. Bye guys!